Texas. To outsiders, we are just cowboys and horses, but we all know that Texas has the biggest, most beautiful cities in the world, from the state capital of Austin to the busy highways in the large city of Houston. Or maybe you might be in the history-enriched city of San Antonio. Possibly you're in the greatest one of them all, Dallas, Texas. Point is that no matter which corner of this great state you are in, you're covered under the sombrero of coverage with a true Texan. Northwest Insurance Agency. Call us today for sombrero-style coverage from the best in Texas.
This is the On the Pony Express podcast, part of the On3 network. Check out all the SMU coverage you need at ontheponyexpress.com. Now, here's your host, Billy Embody.
1, 2, 3, let me go.
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the On the Pony Express podcast. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for joining me on this Friday. We've got a lot to get to on the podcast presented by our friends at Northwest Insurance Agency. Mark Villasana and his team, reach out to him at Northwest Insurance Agency, 214-352-5656, or email them info@nwagencies.com. Lots to talk about with Mark Villasana, an SMU alum, including the latest commitment that we had at ontheponyexpress.com. We were live out there at North Forney High School's spring game Thursday evening. The weather was just kind of that nice, humid, not too hot yet, but not cool by any means either. And it was a sign of what was going on with SMU as well, as they continue to heat up on the recruiting trail in this class of 2026. Landing one of the top defensive backs in the state of Texas. And we go to that commitment right now with Deuce Gilbert, the North Forney defensive back, committing to SMU over Oklahoma and Washington. Yes, if you're a longtime listener or first-time listener of the podcast, that has been a trend this spring, is SMU winning out over Oklahoma, but also just another highly contested recruiting battle as a whole. And Ricky Hunley, you've got to give him a lot of credit here, the cornerbacks coach for SMU, setting the table here long before this spring for this commitment. Deuce Gilbert goes, real name's Ryan, but goes by Deuce, is a longtime target. He picked up an offer really last year in late January, early February on a junior day visit. They had watched him and started to recruit him as a sophomore. And he's getting ready, they offered him, they started recruiting really as a sophomore, and then as a junior, they watched his tape and went ahead and, I guess that would have been his sophomore year. I don't know, going nuts here, but they offered after his sophomore year, recruited him all year as a junior, even when he committed to Texas A&M at one point. He ends up backing off that commitment, and then SMU continued to put the press on here. Oklahoma was the main challenger here, as the Sooners have been for the last probably 2 or 3 SMU targets that they've gotten on board now. And, SMU, I think here just was the most consistent school. And Deuce told me that when I interviewed him ahead of his commitment. He talked about just, the love he feels being at home and playing in front of family and friends. And he's actually been committed to SMU before Thursday night. He was committed to SMU on April 2nd. We've been waiting for this one for quite some time, actually. I know a lot of the North Forney staff, great people over there, and some folks just out that way that said, hey, that was probably mid-April. They said, make sure this is on your radar. Our spring game, we're going to have a commitment, and you're going to want to be there. And so did some digging around, and it's been circled on my calendar for quite some time to get a chance to be out there when Deuce announces his commitment. And, what you see with Deuce is a really intriguing cornerback. And SMU is going to play him at corner, play him at nickel, I think. And he's not the tallest guy in the world, listed at about 5'10" on from what I've gathered. But he is a lot wider in the shoulders than I thought, or maybe it's been, a year since he picked up that offer from SMU when I saw him at junior day. And I did see him on the field at an SMU game this fall, but it was kind of chilly, and he kind of had a jacket on, so you didn't know. But he really does have the right length for the position, and that allows him to make some breaks on the ball. He did catch a touchdown pass in his spring game on Thursday night, but he's going to be, playing mostly defense. I don't think they're going to play much offense, but I guess, the door is open for that. But SMU will get a chance to really allow him to develop. I think with the cornerback room, with where it is now, they can take one in Deuce Gilbert, a versatile player that can play outside or inside. He's a willing tackler. I think he has the right mental makeup for the position, which is something Ricky Hundley is really high on. He likes to go to work. He really doesn't flash too much. He doesn't do many interviews. Throughout his recruitment, I knew SMU was very high on him, and he had taken. I finally sit down with a player, and one who doesn't really maybe talk too much over the phone or over text, and you finally get a chance to sit down with him, and he was great, just very open and excited about the opportunity to play at SMU, as you see him hawk down this ball carrier here last year in his junior tape. And I kind of said, you've been over there, what, a half dozen? He was like, probably more. So he's been around SMU a ton. And that's in a world where actions don't necessarily always lead to commitments. You look at somebody like Landon Barnes, he could go somewhere else. You look at Drew Evers, he's been to SMU probably a dozen times now. Doesn't necessarily mean they'll end up committed to SMU in this day and age of NIL. But with Deuce Gilbert, you could tell that even as the buzz earlier this spring centered around Oklahoma, SMU, I really felt, was in the driver's seat here. And that's just kind of sometimes reading a recruitment right. In my case, I was lucky on that and haven't been as much at other times. But Deuce had just really quietly gone about his business. And I think that's something that stands out to me. He wasn't about tweeting about this or that or pumping himself up. He's about that work, so he'll fit in well from a personality perspective on this defense. And I got a chance to talk with, Anthony Sau, who's now on the North Forney staff. He came over from McKinney, where Coach Shavers was, and he's now the defensive coordinator at North Forney. And I mean, he just really spoke very highly of Deuce and kind of just how much fun he's had coaching him already, since arriving at North Forney, which has an incredible football facility. It's really, really cool to get out there and see what they've built over there. And so looking forward to getting back for a game this fall and watching Deuce as a senior. But Anthony Sau, the defensive coordinator, played at SMU, and he told me, I'm biased. I hope he ends up there, but whoever gets him is going to get a heck of a football player and a heck of a young man. So that's what SMU got. They beat out Oklahoma. He is a high 3-star on the On3 industry ranking. He's the 53rd cornerback in the country, 86 prospect in Texas. I think he has some good straight line speed. I do wonder about just kind of that twitchiness. So it'll be something to continue to watch here. I think this North Forney staff is really, really good. They're going to get him better over the next year, and then he'll get to SMU. But really good football player in Deuce Gilbert, and one that is a very safe bet, I think, for SMU, as far as a player that is going to have the right mindset at the very least, and he's going to do all the things that you ask of him. And you can just tell his family is really excited that he's going to be staying home and playing for SMU, playing for Coach Hundley, who was out there watching him. So I want to see more of Deuce Gilbert. He did a little bit of everything in that spring game Thursday night. So a huge celebration was there. Dave Campbell's was broadcasting it live. So it's good to see some of those folks and some of the other recruiting media brethren out there. And it was just fun. It was a great little taste of the spring football world that, I haven't had a chance to get out as much at lately, but hoping to squeeze in a couple more practices. Was out at Prosper earlier this month. So looking forward to maybe squeeze in a little bit more. SMU did offer one of Deuce Gilbert's teammates, and so it's worth noting before we move on that Bryson Thrower out of North Forney is one of the new offers in the 2027 class for SMU. This kid's a dude. I think he's going to end up being a on 300 type of player. He really has been somebody who's been on the rise in a big way this spring, and has impressed a lot of college coaches that have rolled through there. SMU did offer on Thursday. Rob Likens was by to see him, and it was funny. you see somebody blow up and you see that SMU was by on Thursday again to see Deuce Gilbert on his commitment day. And I was talking to one of the North Forney coaches, and I said, did SMU offer Bryson? And they said yes, actually today. I was like, good call, because he went off on the spring game. And sometimes when you maybe might be just a step behind and you're the local school, sometimes it could hurt you a little bit, but SMU did a good job getting in there and offering Bryson Thrower. So good move there by SMU. And before we go on with the podcast, I do want to remind you guys that we're also presented by our friends at StatusJet, statusjet.com. Make sure you reach out to David Henry and his team and get the lowdown on how that discount, when you mention On the Pony Express, will impact your travel, whether it be a big plane, small plane, whether you want to do the trip with family or friends or work colleagues. Mention On the Pony Express, get a discount on a round trip flight with StatusJet. It's perfect time to maybe, squeeze in that last second Memorial Day weekend trip, or start planning ahead for the 4th of July or Labor Day weekend and get your SMU football season plans underway as well. You can start the conversation. You don't need a membership. You don't need to put down a fat amount of money to be a part of the StatusJet family. You can do it as a one-off too, which is a pretty good deal too. So make sure you reach out to StatusJet today and they'll help you plan the trip of a lifetime. All right. We did drop at ontheponyexpress.com. You can subscribe for just $1. Kind of the rundown on maybe some other prospects that SMU sits in a good spot for right now. And so make sure you check that out on the site. But I do want to get to a bunch of the mailbag questions that you guys had on the podcast earlier this week. So we'll run down a lot of them at ontheponyexpress.com. And I'm going to actually share the screen this time, because for those of you who watch the podcast and don't always see the message board side of things, this is where we chat all day, and people can ask questions, chime in on some of the commitment threads, and it's a great time. And we've had people get jobs off this board. We've had great friendships born and fostered over the many years. So did want to give you guys a little bit of a read on the message board here as we go through the questions. So I don't think I answered this one, but it was the first question of the mailbag questions thread. And Pony Reb 95 asks, for the lay people, could you explain how the revenue sharing model is expected to work? Will all schools have an equal amount to distribute? Does SMU have an edge over other schools since there are fewer sports, being a private institution, cost of attendance, et cetera? Also, what happens to NIL and existing collectives in the rev share world? So until there is a final ruling by the judge in the House settlement case, there's still some moving parts here. So some of this won't be set completely in stone, but generally it's going to be about $20 million, I believe, that schools are expected to share with student athletes per year. And then it is on the school to divide up that amount of money. And for college basketball teams, that could mean, if you're in the Big East and you're St. John's, you can spend a whole lot more on your college basketball team versus you don't have a football team. So that is one area where it can, work against football schools. But SMU does have an edge here in the sense that I'm told that their revenue share pool for football is right up there with, it might be one of the top few in the country. So they're really pushing their chips in on that. They've got basketball well funded. They're going to handle the legit side of NIL on that front and figure all of that out. But they are very well prepared in both sports to be among the higher end spenders, in particular in football. Comparatively with basketball, you've got some of those Big East schools and some, your Kentuckys and Duke, and that will just always kind of, figure it out on that front. But SMU has created an edge for itself with football. So it's really all I could say about that. But when it comes to NIL and existing collectives, the NIL side, there's going to be a portal of sorts where Deloitte is expected to rule on all of the NIL deals that get entered. So any NIL deal over $600 will get put through the clearinghouse, and people will review it and then approve or deny it. And it sounds like there's going to be like preferred partners, and there's going to be, some ways to maybe streamline it, but it's going to be messy, and NIL deals are going to be challenged and all that stuff. So it's going to be really interesting. Most collectives are moving in-house, and it just depends on the school how they're going to structure that, like whether if they have already staff that work on the collectives or volunteers, how they're going to be handled, things like that. So it's kind of a moving system that people are still trying to figure out. CRE Pony 21 asked, "Good morning, Billy. The 2026 recruiting class is fantastic already. They're now, I believe, inside the top 20. Do you have a breakdown on how many more to expect by position? I know you did your prediction article. I just can't find it. I imagine they aren't done yet. In addition, hard to predict, but what do you think the chances that next year's class is better?" And I'm not sure if he means 26 or 27, but I guess I could say for both. SMU has 12 commitments right now. They have a quarterback. They have Cole Leinert. Do they have two running backs? Do they have one running back right now? I think they have one. They have Christian Rhodes at running back. Yeah, they have one. And so they want another running back. They have 3 wide receivers committed in Xavier Barnett, Algernon Miles, and Ja'Kai Anderson. They'd love at least one more. Then they don't have a tight end yet. They'd love a tight end. And then they have Papunga Katoa. Sorry, I'm butchering that. But Papunga Toa Katoa is the lone offensive line commit. Then they've got Amontre Harris and Keith Doty on the defensive line. And then they don't have a linebacker yet. They have Markel Dabney, of course, he just committed this week. And then they have a cornerback in Deuce Gilbert, and they have 2 safeties in Braylon Edwards and Markel Ford. So at safety, they could take one more. It would have to be like a stud at this point. And then Andre Clark is another cornerback option. They've got a couple other lines in the water on that one that they're trying to take maybe one more corner, but they've got to be really, really good. They want another linebacker. They want another defensive tackle at least. They want 2, in an ideal world. And I guess I'm counting backwards here, but that could be, 6 if you add another edge, and then probably 4 offensive linemen, 10, and then another wide receiver, another tight end, 12. I mean, you could see this class be around that 25 mark. I think that would be pretty safe. And then we'll kind of see, who those are. They've got their next big official visit weekend, June 6th, and then they've got June 20th is the next one after that. So as far as the class itself, it's trending to be better than the class of 2025. We'll see kind of how the next few weeks go, but I would say it's once again going to be the highest rated. And then you could say the same probably for 27 if they have the similar on-field success that they did this past year. All right, Swaim Song, do you foresee any wide receiver taking a step up this year and having a Rashee Rice, Emmanuel Sanders, Prochet type season? First of all, the homegrown on James Prochet was outstanding. Really, really good stuff by the SMU football video staff. So make sure you guys watch that. If you haven't, it's on Twitter, it's on Instagram. I don't know if it's on Facebook, but I guess it could be. I don't know if we're going to see a wide receiver take a step up this year like Rashee Rice. I mean, remember, Rashee, semifinalist for the Blitnikoff. Emmanuel Sanders, I don't know if he got up that high. James Prochet was, all conference, things like that. I don't know. I mean, the guy I would pick is Jordan Hudson, maybe Amir Knight, but those would be the 2 that I would pick to step up and have that type of a year. I think it's going to be hard. You've got 2 really good tight ends. You've got a run game that they really want to stick with. I don't know if we're going to see that level of a step up. Now, if you want to have a 800-yard receiver and a guy that can really be a little bit of a go-to, I could see that happening. I could see that, but I mean, having an All-American Blitnikoff type of season, I don't think so. SMU 65. Do we think teams like LSU? We talked about this on the last one with the series. Mustang 23. Which on-3 board fan base causes you the most headache? I assume just in general. I don't know. The Alabama board really hates me, or hated me from LSU days. The Texas board really hated me from LSU days. So I guess those two, but I don't really think most of them caused me a headache. So yeah. Let's see what else. Cincy Pony, what are the most important things Kevin Jennings needs to do to take his game to the next level? I mean, take care of the ball. I mean, Kevin Jennings had the same yards per attempt at various points of the season as Cam Ward last year. And at some points he was better. And the thing about Kevin, and I think this is lost on quarterback rankings. I think it's lost on fans at times. I mean, no offense. I mean, we can talk about this till we're blue in the face. Preston Stone is not leading SMU to the season that they had last year. I mean, he's not. And there are many quarterbacks across the country that are on those top 25 lists that are not leading SMU to the season that they had last year. And part of that's winning and being a winner. Part of that's just fit. And part of that's just, maybe having a good enough team around you. I don't think Kevin, outside of Brashard Smith, had like this insane team around him. I mean, very, very good, but like, that's just me. I mean, is it Sam Levitt at Arizona State had Scatterbro? Quinn Ewers when he was there, and whatever Arch Manning's going to have this year. I mean, those are guys that are playing in the NFL. I don't know. I take care of the ball. I mean, that's it. I mean, you're going to get more comfortable in your system, so you're going to know it a little bit better. You're going to know looks a little bit better. You're going to know defensive schemes. Maybe for some of these teams that SMU is going to face again, Kevin Jennings is going to know TCU maybe a little bit better. He's going to know Louisville. He's going to know Clemson. I think Clemson has a new defensive coordinator, but you're going to know how to manage some of those games. But I mean, it just comes down to take care of the ball in early critical moments. Like Kevin fumbling against Virginia, yeah, he's going to run stadiums or run laps or do whatever the staff does for punishment. But fumbling against UVA at the end of the game is not going to impact the game. But one of the reasons why I think Clemson won that game against SMU is Cade Klubnik took care of the ball in critical moments where the game was still in the balance. If Cade Klubnik forces something over the middle towards the end of the second quarter and SMU takes advantage and, turns the game a little bit, it's different. It's not just a tail whipping in the second half that SMU did. So, yeah, I mean, he's not perfect, and very few quarterbacks are, but just take care of the ball. Take care of the ball at a reasonable level. If you take the Duke game out, he had less fumbles than Cam Ward. Cam Ward killed his team with key turnovers at the wrong time. And, was a Heisman Trophy finalist because he threw 1,000 yards or something in the first two games and 7 touchdowns against Florida or something. Yeah, I mean, if Kevin Jennings has the type of start like Cam Ward did the last season and leads SMU to a win over Baylor, and then, pads his stats and they're gaudy the first 3 games, that's going to help. So I don't know. I think he's just got to take care of the ball. SMU alum 11. We talked about this preseason record. 2018 Mustang. What position should be better or worse than last year's team? I'll pick one on each side of the ball. One better, one worse. I would say better. I think it's safe to say that I think the offensive line is going to be better. I think worse. I'm sorry. no offense to the running backs, and I love what SMU's done with the running back room. It's tough to see the Brashard Smith production and impact that he had as a committee, or even if somebody emerges as a hot hand. And then defensively, I would say worse your defensive line, particularly your interior. I don't want to group the edges in there maybe as much because, there's talent there. There's a lot of pieces. And then I guess better, I would say the cornerback position. I would say the corners. I think that's going to be pretty safe. SMU 1523. Any word on what we're doing with the last scholarship or two? Anyone still in the portal? I mean, honestly, there's really not much. So I don't know what they end up doing. I mean, I haven't really heard too much on that. I don't think there's really not too much. So we'll just kind of see. I mean, they're magicians on the portal, so I don't really bother them too much. I try to ask around if there is any buzz that something's going to happen, and I can usually get good responses if there is. But especially with a last scholarship, and you need probably to hit on something, they're not going to let too much out. SMU grad, with the running back room still light compared to prior years, do you see guys like, I don't see Zane Miners getting burned. I don't even know. Did he portal? I don't think he did, but we have had this discussion a couple of times in the offseason. Zane did have a knee injury, and he was out for the season. So I don't expect him to get more burn. I mean, even last year, you would have thought Derek McFall here and there could have gotten more burn or opportunities at times when Brashard was clearly hurt and they didn't do it. So I don't see them. I don't see them doing that unless they're forced to. Here's a good question for those of you watching on YouTube. Who's the better QB? God, what a quarterback room that was. JJ and KP, those are the guys though. Those are the dudes. I had a great time. Ryan Foster was my roommate for camp and for the bowl game. We had a blast. So good times. Pony Fan 3, any speculating on the next remodeling phase? Yeah, we've kind of talked about this. I still think it's something that moves along quicker than people might think, and that's because there's serious people running this university right now, and things are going in the right direction. That's great, Ralph. What is the status of teams outside of kickers and returners? Did some of the players who left via the portal contribute to special teams? Randy Reese would have and maybe did a little bit. Zach Smith would have maybe did a little bit. But really not too much. Yeah, I mean, SMU is going to have another deep special teams unit, I think. And SMU's done a good job of kind of moving around pieces to make sure there's good players on there, but also some depth guys. But I think the depth of SMU is getting a lot better too. So the team should be fine. They've got a new long snapper in Morgan Tribbett. They'll have a new punter, but and then we'll see if Colin Rogers can retake the kickoff job, but he'll be the kicker once again too. So, and then Ymir Knight will return punts in all likelihood, and one of the running backs, I bet, is the kick returner. All right, Flock of Seagulls. He's got two questions related to Papunga Toa Katoa. One, I think we have a good handle on how strength and conditioning gets a player to bulk up, but what is the process like when you have a interior offense lineman who needs to drop 60 pounds? Man, I don't really. I think you have to eat super clean, I would imagine. A lot of like high protein, right amount of fuel, but enough to like you've got to be able to cut a little bit. And then you try to cut during the off season is what I understand. And then you maintain during the season. Like Ja'Kai Clark lost a ton of weight between when he got to campus over the course of the season while he redshirted and then the off season. And he's still like, I mean, if he had a whole nother year, dropped even more. But it's just that you've also got a strength train too. So it's really difficult. But I think Katoa is going to be fine, though. I think he's already dropped a lot of weight from when I saw him as going into his junior year. So he'll be fine, I think. He's just going to be a big, big dude. It's been touched on a little bit before, but I'm curious how Justice was able to seemingly flip the switch on a poly pipeline. Obviously, there was a lot of groundwork delay, but I recall a quote from Justice last year about wanting to go out and get more of those guys, and suddenly here we are. Whatever he did was extremely effective and efficient. He coached out at UNLV. He has some ties out on the West Coast still. And from what I understand, he really made some really good impressions on some polys, particularly out in Hawaii. And that was kind of like the piece where, he was able to kind of be easily back into the California scene and then go out to Hawaii and kind of do the same thing. And so it just kind of took a minute because you can't just go out and throw everything out. And I'm not saying this any other way than this, but you can't throw everything out and just be like, we're only going to recruit polys. But I mean, Drew Hill, Abel Hoopy, knowing some of the guys that, like the Eagles scout that turned him on to the big New Zealander that's now on the team. He's massive. I forget his name off the top of my head because he's going to be a 3-year project probably. But, those are some of the things that they've kind of done. And basically it's just, I mean, if you've ever met Garen Justice, like he's like, anyone could have your opinions on the offensive line or whatever, but he just vibes really well with just about everybody. So that's kind of I just think he's just very welcoming, real, and that goes a long way in that culture. And then, SMU's done a good job of playing the right cards there and all of that. So, yeah. Mr. Miyagi, are we content with having Cole Leinart as the sole QB commit in the class? Yes, they are, but they are going for Keyshawn Henderson or bust as the second quarterback. So it's a long time. I don't see it happening, but that's kind of what their plan is. And, they can always address through the portal if they need to after the fact on more quarterback depth to replace like a, Van Dyke. If it's clear he's not going to play in 26 for SMU as the guy, he might leave. They'll bring in another option, things like that. So just, yeah, they're fine. They're fine with Cole Leinart. I mean, he's a big kid. His dad was a late bloomer from what I understand as well. So we'll see. He's actually going to be playing in one of the All-Star games right up the road in Frisco. So I'm excited to see him at some point. Before we go any further, I do have to remind you guys, of course, about our friends at the Thomas Auto Group. Make sure you get by the Thomas Auto Group on 75 in McKinney. They're Ford, Subaru, Volkswagen dealerships. Check them out. The employee pricing is a great deal. I was telling some of my hockey teammates about it, and they were kind of like, oh, okay. All right. We're going to file that one away. Employee pricing on new and pre-owned vehicles. So make sure you visit our friends at Thomas Auto Group today and get with them on your vehicle. And also, if you don't see something there for you, they might be able to find it out on the market too. So keep that in mind on the pre-owned front. 55 truck. We covered this one as well. Alan Stang, who's the fastest player on the team now. I would say Dalen Singleton and Jalen Davis Robinson. Jalen Davis Robinson, I think fastest or second fastest with Moochie. So Jalen Davis Robinson is probably the fastest now. Dalen Singleton's got to be right there as well. Chris Johnson Jr., he can absolutely go. Yeah, he can go. Anything new with the uniforms this year? Larger Mustang on the helmet, new color combo? I don't think so. I don't think so. Rhett has always kind of tweaked here and there, but I don't think they're going to do anything different this year. I could be wrong on that, but I don't think so. Is Pruna contributing to the fertilizer for the new grass at Ford? If not now, I'm sure he will during the season. Correct. Yeah, exactly. Show Pony, I kind of addressed this already, and with the rev share and the peers and things like that, but Yeah, so I've kind of already hit on that. So hope you heard that. Bunch of numbers. We'll get you a new username if you want it. Just send me a message. Now that spring ball is wrapped, and I know it's still early, but in your eyes, does this team look better than last year's? Do you see them making the college football playoff again? Yes, and also no. And here's why. Like last year, I think it was just so apparent that the defensive line was going to be so good, and that SMU. It was kind of funny because they added Burchard, of course, but that SMU couldn't run the ball on him in practice. I mean, just really, I mean, it was rarely did I ever see a big play. This spring, we saw a lot of kind of big plays and things like that from the run game. And of course, your immediate thought is, oh no, like they've really dropped the ball. Here goes the defense, whatever. But really, they have upgraded the interior of the offensive line. I really believe that. And at the same time, I think we know that the defensive line has to prove it on the field this fall, but the defense can still be very good. And I think they will be. And I think the secondary will help them be better, or be, still very, very good defense. And when you have a returning starting quarterback, I've said this plenty, that is so huge. I mean, look at the jump that Cade Klubnik took from 23 to 24. That's the type of jump that I'm expecting Kevin Jennings. I'm expecting Kevin Jennings to have a Heisman Trophy finalist type of season. Now, whether he gets there is whatever, but he needs to have that type of season. I think he can for SMU to be in the college football playoff again. I think it's going to need to happen. And I don't think the path is that bad, guys. Like the schedule in ACC play does not really bother me like as much as it might. Like Big Bad Clemson is the one that SMU is going to have to win to really, I think, force its hand into making it to Charlotte and kind of secure that. But Louisville and Miami don't worry me like they might worry, the fan base as a whole, if that makes sense, I guess, right? Like SMU went into Louisville last year and beat them. And really, I mean, truthfully, I mean, they left some plays out there. They had some opportunities that I know they want back. They fell asleep for like 5 minutes and the game was tied before you know it. It's kind of a wake-up call. And then they beat the brakes off of Pitt and broke Pitt. They literally broke them. They beat a good Boston College team generally pretty handedly. They did some really good things last year. And because of that, when you get teams like Louisville or Miami at home, it doesn't really make me sweat as much. And if SMU makes it to Charlotte, I mean, you got to like their chances to win it, which would send them back to the college football playoff. And let's just go ahead and assume that at least they get one of the two versus Baylor and TCU. That's the expectation of this team. Because if you have that expectation that they should be that good, and if you think that the offense takes the step forward and the defense stays solid, then they should win those types of games. Because while Baylor finished strong and TCU finished strong, they didn't have the seasons that should inspire insane confidence. They didn't lose, a game early in the season and then rip off 10 straight and just miss out on the college football playoff. They were still two teams with multiple losses on the year in regular season play. So kind of keep that in mind when thinking about those two games in a sense. And so, yes, I see SMU with the ability to make the college football playoff again. I think they will. I think a part of that could be, the ACC being the ACC. But that doesn't mean they can't do it. So Boulevard staying, was Ryan Hampton's timeline and are SMU heavy hitters ready to throw the bag at him? I really haven't asked around on this too much, but if you don't know who Ryan Hampton is, 2027 prospect out of Dynamic Prep, and He is the son of Rod Hampton and brother of RJ Hampton. Rod played at SMU. He's the number one shooting guard in the country. He's top 5 player overall. SMU's got to get him. This is the type of player that Andy Enfield was brought in to get. And they've done a good job getting him on campus multiple times. And that's a good thing. That's great. And it's too early to say whether the bag is going to be there to ensure he'll stay home. But man, again, this is the type of player that Andy Enfield's been brought in to get. So SMU needs to get him. And I kind of said this, that's why I thought it was really important that, maybe SMU made a run at Braden Burries, but they've got to figure out how to get Ryan Hampton. And I don't know his timeline. I have no idea. I don't know if he'll reclass up or anything like that. LA Mustang, which of the freshmen, Jaden Toombs, Jermaine O'Neal Jr., BJ Davis-Ray, or Nigel Walls is expected to have the biggest impact this season? I would say Jaden Toombs. He just produces all over the place in high school at a high level. I think averaged a double-double maybe as a senior. So I expect Jaden Toombs. I think the opportunity is more there in the front court as well. So I would say Jaden Toombs. The Preston Stone Age, who are the biggest remaining pieces for the 2026 class that you think are must-gets? Any sort of confidence level for any of them? I'll give you one on each side of the ball, and I'm going to go on the offensive side of the ball. This one's pretty simple for me. I go Drew Evers. I think they've invested a ton of time. They've invested, so much into this recruitment. Kind of similar to Papunga Toa Katoa. His dad is an adjunct at SMU, if I have that right. His office is 15 minutes from campus. He's already had a brother go big time Power 4 football, transfer a bunch. Just stay home, play early. SMU needs him. I mean, he could be a starter somewhere on the offensive line day one. I think the opportunity is there for him. I think they've done a really good job recruiting him. And so he's a must get in that regard for me. And if they do get him, then awesome. And I think they do have a legitimate shot to get him and make that one happen. So that's my offensive one. The defensive one, man, I probably go at this point with with Landon Barnes, and here's why. And I'd love to. Well, I guess I'll give you two. Landon Barnes, the defensive lineman from Duncanville, is one of the top targets for SMU. He's taken an official visit. He does have official visit scheduled to go see a bunch of other top programs: Georgia, Ole Miss, Ohio State, a bunch of others. LSU, I think, if I didn't say them already. And SMU's taking the first crack at him. And they've done really well. The whole defensive staff was by to see him. I think this is a must-get. Would really solidify the edge long-term, like not even as a pure pass rusher, but probably a bigger edge. And he's a Duncanville kid, so keep the pipeline going. But I'll give you one more, and that's Jamian Winfield, the USC commit. Top 100 prospect, one of the top defensive linemen in the entire nation. And SMU needs high school defensive linemen. They've got Keith Doty. I think they can keep Keith Doty. I know Texas just offered, but I think there's a chance they keep him. And, if they compare Keith Doty with Jamian Winfield, then you're in good shape long term. And you've landed a huge commitment from your backyard, and one that you were on way early. And so Jamian Winfield is probably the other must get, and they're in it. They're in it for him. Second question from Preston Stone Age. Who are your candidates for surprise breakout player of the year, similar to Brashard Smith, Kevin Jennings, offense or defense, or both? The breakout player for me is surprise. Surprise is kind of tough. Maybe it's because we just know so much about these guys. I guess surprise breakout player would probably be Terry Webb, the Texas State defensive lineman. People would probably, I guess, casuals. See, surprise is like, we're all in this. We're on the message board. We're chatting all day. And I've sung the praise of Terry Webb. And there's some around him that think he can be an NFL guy in the end with a good year this year. But maybe a casual would say, oh, it's just Texas State transfer. Like, what about the Purdue ones? I would say Terry Webb would probably be on my radar, but I guess a guy maybe even a little bit quieter on the radar who isn't going to start. DJ Warner, I think, can really, really go. And they really like Akeel Washington too, the South Alabama transfer. So I don't know, that really wasn't a good answer, I guess, but we'll see. The surprise breakout player on offense, I think it's got to be Chris Johnson Jr., right? Or Adam Moore, maybe at tight end, but that's crowded. I would say Chris Johnson Jr. He's got the wheels, he's got the speed. He can make some things happen. So, yeah, I think that's it on that one. Before I answer the rest of these questions, do want to remind you guys, of course, that we're presented by our friends at Northwest Insurance Agency. Call me Mark Villasana today, 214-352-5656. And also, we are presented by our friends at Manny's as well. Say queso when you talk with your server about your bill and get 10% off your Manny's food. Excludes alcohol and third-party delivery apps, but 10% off at Manny's, pretty good deal. So make sure you go over there and enjoy your time at Manny's. We had a blast doing our Cinco de Mayo party. So make sure you check out Manny's and mention queso to your server and get 10% off your meal at Manny's. So again, I was talking with the hockey guys and they were like, really, we need to go there after an early game. I was like, absolutely. Say when. And we'll say queso. All right. SoCal Pony, do you think the men's basketball program will bring in any additional significant players to this year's team? Is the roster effectively set? I think it's set. I just don't think there's necessarily like much out there that they can really spend on and necessarily feel good about. So that's my opinion. I think it's effectively set, but they're probably recruiting some internationals and kind of doing that thing. Phoenix asked, any chance to do a podcast with Sam Erger? Yes, we're going to kind of use this offseason to get some more podcast guests on and do that. And I'm going to do them from my house on some occasions with, I got hernia surgery coming up here in early June. So that's not fun, but good chance to just chat on video chat and do some podcasts, I guess. So yeah, we'll definitely have Sam on. We want to get other coaches on too. So we had Sam on before her breakout season last year. If you remember that podcast with Kevin Lonnquist. So probation coach, to the extent you have visibility into this kind of thing, can you talk about NIL compensation that Miami had to shell out to land Jackson Cantwell? Sorry, I'm bringing up his profile for those of you who don't know him. And relative to what SMU had to shell out to land Dramad Odoms, I know these aren't equal prospects. I know offensive line recruiting is crapshoot, but I'm curious about how the deals come together and what they look like. So and this is my understanding, they are not remotely comparable for not even reasons like, oh, they're a number one overall player in the country and then just a regular 5-star. Dramad Odoms did not really blow up into 5-star status until the All-American Bowl after he was signed with SMU. So lucky SMU on that one. But so that's a huge, huge piece to it. But SMU just overall, so Dramad is interesting. And actually, I don't think I've written this story. I've got it in the bag for you guys. If not, I'll bump it on the board. But basically, Dramad Odoms kind of took and he admitted this too, so it's not a secret, but he kind of took a weirdish approach to recruiting, and he basically did not talk to college coaches in his early recruitment. And SMU just kind of didn't take it personally and just kind of was like, all right, whatever, just keep us in mind, and kept checking in with the staff, and all those things. And Dramad kind of turned off a lot of colleges with that approach, quite frankly. And then I think he kind of realized, oh crap, I actually have to I can't just show up somewhere and commit. Like there was another school super early in its process that I was told he showed up at or tried to just visit and saying I'm coming, coach, I'm going to commit. And it didn't end up happening or whatever. And that he hit a reset button and then kind of went about his recruitment. If you'll recall, he took a couple official visits and things like that. And SMU was one of them. They just kind of won out in the recruitment. And then I think he just kind of went back to laying low. And there were a couple schools that poked around. Auburn I don't know if Auburn ended up offering or if they just kind of were recruiting him or trying to recruit him. But I just think he shut it down. And so I don't know what the NIL deal is there, but it's nothing close. I mean, Jackson Cantwell, number 1 overall player in the country at the time of his commitment, is getting recruited by Miami, Georgia. I don't know who else was the finalist. I didn't really follow it that closely, but I know Miami, Georgia, I guess Oregon was another one, Michigan. And he committed as the number 1 overall prospect. And so I know he got about $2 million. So there you go. Now he's a right tackle from what I understand. So anyway, $2 million. So there it is. We'll see. Yeah, it's like I've kind of said a couple times here and there. And again, now that you have the clearinghouse with Deloitte, it's going to be an interesting piece of how this all works. But if you have a big business, and I guess if they are not too tied to the university, you could find a way to get somebody to sponsor said player, like the probation coach left tackle. Just say, it's all good. I got you, Kevin. And if you want to sponsor the left tackle for $2 million every year, you could probably do that if you've got a big business, whatever. Or you just do it the old fashioned way, I guess. I think we're going to see some things go back underground. And so in that regard, it would be the secret, left tackle sponsor. But yeah, it's crazy money, man. It's nuts. And here's the thing, like I bet you could probably get, another blue chip offensive tackle for $1 million, or you get one out of the portal for $1 million, and you're less risk, and you go get 2 out of the portal. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying don't recruit and don't get the number 1 overall player in the country, but man, like, there's a lot of money to get him. So, man, it's nuts. But yeah, that's kind of it's 2 very, very, very different recruitments and all of those things. So yeah. All right. Last one, Pony Up Dallas. The 2026 class seems to be larger than prior years when we relied heavily on the portal. If my observation is accurate, does this mean we're likely to rely less on the portal, or is it just a product of the times where we are 1, a power conference team and have more opportunities, and 2, we are loading up knowing portal departures are now part of the equation? Thanks. So last year's class, 2025, was actually, what did it end up at? 25 high school commits. And that's probably a sweet spot for SMU. And the year before that, let's see if I can go back. Of course not. The year before that, 2024, going into SMU's first season in the ACC, they took 11 high school players. 2023, they took 16. So they hadn't learned that they were in the ACC yet. Rhett Lashley and his staff are kind of settling in. Rhett's first year, they took 13. My years are right. Yeah, 13, including RJ Maryland. So now what you're seeing is, and we've kind of touched on this a couple of times, you're seeing SMU's future be settled now, right? Rhett gets here, first 2 years, they've got to churn the roster. They've got to get better defensively. They've got to add transfers. They've got to do that. They can still recruit some high school guys. Man, did they hit on some of those. I mean, that 2022 class, let me see. Yeah, RJ Maryland is the highest rated one. That looks good. Isaiah Smith panned out. Ahmad Moses really panned out. Kevin Jennings really panned out. And that's kind of it on the high school front. Some other like busts. AJ Davis played some games. But that's about it. And then the 2023 class, you had Kilgore as the top guy. And then, man, the rest of that one right now, Brandon Maizona might be the only other contributor. We'll see. There's a couple hanging around in there. We'll see how they pan out. Adam Moore, Jackson Lavender, guys like that. But Trip Reardon. And then 24, you get in there, and it's your class that you've recruited off of an AAC championship, and then you find out you're going to the ACC and you press pause because you got to load up and get ready for it. So they get Derek McFall. That was a big recruiting win. They were building momentum. You get Brandon Booker right early in the season. Their top 3 commits in that class, Derek McFall, Brandon Booker, and William Nettles, were all flips or committed elsewhere at some point and came after the start of the season. So that's pretty good stuff. And they, I think, all will play some ball for SMU. And we know Derek McFall will, in particular, and Booker and Nettles will. And then you've got some other guys that got to step up. And they kind of stopped recruiting high school after that, once they found out they were going to the ACC. So you fast forward 25, they were in the ACC, had success, were able to recruit this class that they ended up being able to take more guys and settle in because they had done a good job of changing over the roster through the portal. And now 26 is going to be about the same size as 25. And really, I mean, SMU wants to build this thing from the high school ranks. They want to take shots on Dallas kids. They want to take shots on some others. It's cheaper. You got to be able to recruit the high school ranks. You have to, especially in the state of Texas. And so they're in the power conference, so they have more opportunities and better players. And then it's not as much the portal departures are part of the equation, because when you look ahead, if you look at the my scholarship, group, you've got, let's see, am I missing anyone here? I've got 19 right now, seniors that, and I don't think, I think I'm good. Well, really, you'd have, 19, because David Abiara portaled, and then Jonathan Jefferson for sure is going to be back. So actually 18, if you assume Tyler Van Dyke's going to be back as well. So you got 18 spots. And, if you get to 25, then you plan for, 7 others, just kind of general attrition. You're in good shape. So, 25 is where they want to hang out at. And that means you're putting up a ton of jump shots. You're, recruiting positions, each year. And I think they don't want to rely on the portal as much. They want to retain. They want to retain because that means their players are hitting. That means their players are good, all of those things. So, that's it on the mailbag. So, they're just trying to build off of 25, which was the best class in SMU modern history, and do that again in 26. And then 27, they can do it again and just keep stacking really, really high-end high school recruiting classes, then plug little holes in the portal. So that's why it's so critical. They got to get a couple more defensive tackles in this class, and then they're kind of set long-term and maybe don't have to plug as many each year. So with that, guys, hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Do want to remind you guys one more time, we're presented by our friends at Northwest Insurance Agency. Give Mark Villasana and his team a call. And also AKM Turf and Greens. They can do your backyard, $500 off your project by mentioning On the Pony Express. Had one of my friends that went to SMU with us ask about Alex Carpenter and his team. So got them lined up, and we'll see about where their project goes. So looking forward to sharing that if that happens. But they can turn your backyard into an oasis. So make sure you reach out to AKM Turf and Greens today and get $500 off your project when you mention On the Pony Express. So hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, hour long, went a little long, rambled a little bit, but hope it helps you get you through your weekend. We'll be back next week with more on the Pony Express podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the On the Pony Express podcast with Billy Embody. Follow us on your socials on X at SMU3 and on Instagram at On3SMU. And keep it locked to OnThePonyExpress.com for more coverage.